Hey, what's going on? Miguel Lloyd, host of Life Full Circle Radio. And so we get, where that little lint at? Here we go. Oh, well, here it is. Okay. Welcome back to Life Full Circle Radio. So we're going to have some fun today. We had a conversation. We've got my man coming back and hang out with us this week, Keith Reed, one of the friends of the show. Some sports and political commentary that has been gaining traction. And so Keith said, we got to call Reed Keith. I said, cool. Give him a call. Let's go. Check us out on all the social media platforms right now, live on YouTube, on Instagram, on Twitch, is where we are, and on Facebook. So make sure you check us out on all of these platforms. Super producer, what's going on?
What's up? Happy Wednesday.
I saw you trying to be healthy, eating an apple, I think, right before the show, right?
Yeah, eating an apple and drinking a glass of wine. This is my dinner. So yeah, this is where we're at in our fitness journey. One apple and a glass of wine. So yes,
all right. Well, you know, whatever works for you. I got
working out 7 days a week.
Are you really?
Yeah, 7 days a week. Sometimes I burn boot camp, and on the days because I can't do leg day because my knee's so bad, I take my oldest and we go to Planet Fitness.
Okay.
Which I hate, but whatever.
Why you hate Planet Fitness? What's the problem with Planet Fitness?
Planet Fitness is such an unserious brand. It's just an unserious.
It's for folks. I mean, you're trying to get in that gym. You're trying to get something done. So anyway, a lot going on. We had an interesting show last week. A big part of the show last week, we were talking about women athletes, and part of the conversation kind of bled into some of the conversation around transgender athletes and all of that. But other than that, but back it up before we bring Keith on here in a minute. What else is going on this week that we did not touch on, that we're not going to touch on with Keith, that you wanted to make sure we got in here before we brought Keith in?
I mean, I think we hit all the core things. The one thing that we did not hit with our interview with Keith is the other. So we're talking about advertising and marketing and how, the whole political landscape has changed how marketing is viewed, and how companies really don't care. They just don't give a damn about what they put out to people because they think that no one is listening. And one of the things that we didn't get to talk about was the costume from Target, where they're saying looks like a caricature of a Black person, like the Sambo caricature, the thief, the darky. And I'm saying all these terms because these are terms used in literature to describe this character. And the character, it looks like a clown mixed with a tiger, but it has that big white smile. And the kid is doing that thing like it's trying to run away. It also to me looked like a Nitro Circus costume. I again didn't get
what Nitro Circus was. I don't know what that means.
That's okay. I didn't get racism from it. I just got really bad costume. But apparently people are really up in arms about it. How did you feel about it? Because I didn't get the racism from it.
I didn't have a thought about it at all. We're definitely in. Here's the funny thing. You asked me about that, and I know sometimes we've been doing this for a long time, and you sometimes like, how in the world did he miss that, right? Because there's things that's in your algorithm that are not in my algorithm. There's things that and it's finding you. I've kind of been going down this rabbit hole recently around WNBA because my girls are playing, and there's some good basketball being played. So I'm seeing a lot of that, right? This Target thing, we're all, and I don't give a dog on what side of the conversation you're on, what side. There's so many sides, there's so many conversations. We all super sensitive right now, man. Everything is bothering everybody. Part of the reason because folks are so broke right now. And so folks just mad, I ain't gonna lie, what I mean? So, my fuse a little short in this day and age, right? And so this thing that I saw and you showed it and you shared it with me, and I said, it looks stupid. Just like last week when you shared with me, and I pretty much matter of fact, when you shared with me this good what is it called? Good whatever. What is this thing?
Good golf.
Good golf. You texted to me. And I was pretty much like, okay, it's stupid, but why
cares?
do I care?
It's dumb.
I was like, this is dumb, but why do I care? And then you immediately made me care, right? For a couple of very good reasons. You know what I mean? It's and we'll talk about that when we're going to talk about that with Keith when we bring Keith in. But now it's just like everybody is so sensitive about everything. And so this Target costume is ugly to me. I've never been in costume. You've been around me. Well, what is the holiday I hate the most?
Halloween.
So I don't give a daggum about no freaking Halloween costume because I think it's the dumbest holiday anyway that's out there. But I get people who are in their feelings about it, so it is what it is.
And which holiday do you think this household loves the best?
Loves the most?
Loves the most?
Probably Halloween.
Halloween and Christmas. But honestly though, because I have little kids
You have little
who love
kids,
dressing
yeah.
up,
Yeah.
the candy. We do
Yeah.
the neighborhood thing where everybody has like a barbecue and snacks, and people can come get food. So it's an experience. It's not just about scaring people. It's like a community thing that we do.
Right.
But I love Halloween.
But I'm not a Scrooge. When the kids come to the door, they can get their handful of teeth rotting elements in their bag. There's no problem.
Oh, you keep the light on?
So technically, I don't keep the light on. My family keeps the light on.
I was gonna say, do you keep the light on?
Yes, my family keeps the light on.
Are we the Motel 6 keeping the light on for you? Nice. Way to go.
So it is what it is. All right. So other things that are popping off, did you see the story about Trump? And Trump is basically saying, if you guys don't put my name on the side of the Kennedy Center, I'm just going to demolish it. And I'm just like, this guy is, oh my God, I wish he would this 2 years would go away.
That's one of many things he's done in this week, this month, this whatever. We found out that he has his assistant. That whole situation is bizarre. We have Jesse Waters, asking the future senator or congressman, from Michigan. Michigan, asking crazy questions like, I can't believe you're going to blow all of this up into a big deal, purposely using terms like blow up. And then, of course, the candidate.
And then one of the Fox, whichever one, not Megan Kelly. She the one that's still there. There's one that's long gone. There's another one that's been there forever. Which anyway,
Megan Kelly's long gone.
Okay, so it's whatever's the other one that's been there forever. She says, why is he man spreading? I wish he would close his legs. And I'm just like, this is the stuff people at Fox are watching and they're concerned about.
By the way, I've seen a lot of conservative women making that comment about men who sit like that, like on different platforms. Like, why are they man spreading? Who cares? Like, yeah, it's a little weird when we can, it's weird, but it's not something to make a comment about. Like, why are you guys being snowflakes about penises? It's weird.
And here's the thing: what we find out with those people read off the same sheet of music, because somebody sent an email around now that's saying that now let's talk about men spreading, and so now.
Be mad about this week.
Be mad about this
week. And it's like,
but one thing that I'm hearing that they're saying very quietly, in which I know because of the Democratic Party is broke comparatively.
Yes.
And that's a talking point that's going around right now, because there's a lot of the Republicans, even in some of these debate talk shows, they just kind of laugh it off and just basically say, the Democratic Party money is spent anyway behind the candidates. Because there was a conversation going around about Keisha Lance Bottoms here in Georgia, who is running against Rick Jackson, who is a billionaire, made his money as a billionaire in the healthcare industry. And so he is running a ton of ads. He pretty much bought the Republican nomination. He's never ran for office before in his life. He bought that Republican nomination, and now, we're fully into the season, and we're not seeing nearly as many ads on Keisha Lance Bottoms as we're seeing from Rick Jackson. Rick Jackson spent $200 million of his own money, $200 million.
And that's the other thing. When I can't think of his name. I'm sorry. Is his name Abdul?
The guy from Michigan.
Yeah, is it Abdul?
I want to say it's Abdul Saeed, but I hope I didn't mess it up.
Okay, so when Abdul Saeed was on Jesse Waters, they were like, you do realize that your candidate is outspending you 11-1, and that's why your runoff race ended up like. He's like, and water is wet. Like, what do you want?
Right. They got a lot of bread. We don't. Yeah. So what's your point? And so when you get these weird talking points, I saw him with the Jesse Walters, I think, interview, because I don't know all those guys' names on the right, but he kept trying to veer off, and Saeed did a great job of pretty much trying to.
Fantastic job.
Okay, you keep on throwing out all this nonsense that is not important. Come on back over here. Let's talk about the issues. The fact that people can't put gas in their car, and they can't go grocery shopping, and they can't go on vacation. You want to talk about nonsense, and that's just it. It's all a bait and switch type of thing. It's all bait and switch.
He got scared for a second. He was like, do you want to talk about circumcision? I'll talk about circumcision with you. He's like, that's weird. He's like, well, that's what you want to talk about. You want to talk about parents cutting off private parts. Let's talk about circumcision.
It's so funny you said that too. Jesse Walters always kind of talks like a teenage boy every time I see his clips.
Absolutely. 100%. He talks like a boy who just saw a boob for the first time and wants to
Right.
tell everybody about it, and
Right.
like he's so excited and it's weird and creepy. I
Right.
don't know. Ugh, he's
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah, yeah. So anyway, that
anyway.
you know that's been top of the conversation. There's so much always going on with Trump and top of the conversation, but then there's also the Supreme Court has given him the green light to mess with the post office or whatever to try to keep people from getting the voter, and they're going to do everything they can, but it's still the belief that the House is going to flip. But then once you get in the House flipping, then you only get the Republicans all excited again. So it is what it is. All right, so we're about to run it down. We're gonna bring in our brother Keith Reed in here in a minute. We're gonna talk about what we've been talking about over there, and then we're gonna come back. And in full disclosure, it's pre-recorded because Keith got stuff to do, and we had some time earlier today, and so we pre-recorded this segment, and we'll get back on the other end of it. We got the band back
Hmm.
together. My man in the middle, we got Keith Reed. Keith Reed has been a friend of the show for many, many years. We're not even gonna sit up here and call out the years that we called it. Yeah, my man, ESPN former writer. He's writing for the Atlantic. He's written for a little bit of everybody, and then now he's selling every house in Atlanta. But when you get this bug of wanting to know and you know your stuff, I gotta bring him back. We slowly pulled him back into the podcasting space. Come hang out. Keith Reed, what's up, brother?
What's going on, man? Long time no talk.
Long time no talk. So, a few things that we want to talk about today, and Key, I'm gonna let you do what you do. Super producer, you wanted to
What's
talk
up?
about a few things. You reached out to Keith and you said we're gonna get into this thing. What we talking about first? Where we going?
Yeah, because most of our stories today are sports stories, and that is Keith's expertise. So the first story we are going to talk about today is the awful, awful good golf ad that recently was put off by the Callaway Golf brand. Um, Basically, the controversial ad that has landed the good golf in a leap of bad intentions, so a parody to the new horror movie Obsession. So basically, what happened is they thought it would be a great idea to put out an ad that shows a man reaching for his brand new driver, and to stop his wife or whoever this female is supposed to be in the video, he shoves her to the ground. It's supposed to be a parody off the movie Obsession. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Obsession. I know you're not because you're black men.
Yeah,
Basically, the
I'm definitely
movie
not.
the movie's about
Definitely
a
not.
man who falls in love with a girl. It's unrequited love, and he makes a wish so that she will only love him. And it turns into basically a horror movie of her basically torturing herself and doing whatever it takes to stay in love with him. That is supposed to be what the parody is supposed to be about. It's just a golf guy shoving people to the ground, and this made it through multiple people that approved this man shoving this woman to the ground. Keith, what are your thoughts?
It's insane. It's my thoughts to say, like to think. So the number of leaps that you have to. And this morning, Kia, you sent this to me, or was it yesterday that you sent this to
This
me?
this morning.
And and there was a social media influencer who talks about marketing, who made the point that this is what happens when companies get on board with an anti DEI program, because you don't have people sitting in the room who will say, like I just said, this is insane, right?
Right.
The number of, and I think that's a good point, right? I think that the basic point of not having a diverse enough team in the room when you're trying to approve something like this is a great point. But I take it a step further, because what you do, and Kia, I think you framed that perfectly, right? What you're doing is you're assuming certain things are normative. You're making assumptions about what the mainstream may have seen or may know about this particular
The
movie
movie.
and about this
Yeah.
company and about golf and etc. That if everybody who's in the room looks like you and everybody who's in the room shares the same experiences, they won't have any problem looking at that, because they're like, of course I've seen Obsession. I know
Right.
exactly what that is. Ha ha ha! I think that's funny. But when you step outside of a group of people for whom that movie was like required viewing, what required viewing for me, pretty sure wasn't required viewing for Miguel, wasn't required viewing for a whole lot of people that
The
I know.
demographic of that
Um,
movie was the age 21 to 30. That is who that
right,
movie was made for.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Go ahead. Finish your thought, Keith. Go ahead. Finish
So
your
yeah,
thought.
so like they made a bunch of assumptions, it seems,
Yeah.
about stuff that you would have needed to know in order to get the context of the joke. And if you got to explain the joke and the humor is key to your marketing, then you failed.
Then you
The
fail.
best marketing, the best thing that you can do if you're trying to use humor in marketing is to use some sort of a common thread and not to be way, way, way down the rabbit hole when you put something out, because people who aren't in that group to understand aren't going to get it, and it's going to come off wrong. And it's one thing for people just not to get the joke, it's another thing for people not to get the joke when the joke is about domestic violence and it represents your company to the public. That's a whole other thing. So
That's a
it's
whole
like
different
it's
conversation.
that's why I say
So
it's insane, because
yeah,
you
yeah,
expect people to understand why this
yeah,
particular joke about domestic violence is okay because of this movie that not everybody
yeah.
has seen. Like,
Everybody's
come on,
seen.
son. That's
So
that's
soon as
insane.
yeah, so as soon as you mentioned the obsession connection meant nothing. I didn't even go there, right? Because yes, my daughters, one who's my 15-year-old daughter, she came to me whenever that movie came out a few couple of months back. Hey, Dad, I want to go see Obsession, and I'm just like, it's supposed to be a horror flick, and then it's just like, and then I saw the trailer for it, and I was just like, I'm not going to see that with you. That's for kids. It's not. I'm not the demo, right? So I think she went with my older daughter, whatever, and went to see it. But point being, when Kia sent it to me, all I saw was I'm trying to clean my words up. I pretty much saw a dickhead. Sorry, I said it anyway. Running into a girl and knocking her down over a driver, right? And I said to myself, like, but what was my response to you, Kia? This is dumb, but why do I care? Okay. So then, and then of course you gave me some context of the
Yeah.
fact that, and it, because I'm not a golfer.
So
I'm not a golfer. Callaway, I'm somewhat because I'm a sports guy. I understand it's a golf
mhm.
brand. The whole good, whatever that is. All that stuff to me went right over my head. And it goes back to the original context in that there was nobody in the room that said, this is a bad idea. Because without context, without the obsession context, without the all of that, it just looks really bad for this guy to run into this girl, knock her to the ground over a driver. And that's the joke.
Well, let me take it a step further. Let's say they are doing the whole obsession film. Let's say they're trying to make these two things connect and make people understand that. It still doesn't make sense in that context because in the film Obsession, she's obsessed with making him happy. Like creepily obsessed. He fell through a window, so instead of going around the door, she like walks through glass. Like she does all these things to that show because she's being controlled by his obsession. That
Mhm.
still doesn't match up. When I explain that, that doesn't even go with the ad. So all you guys really did is again make a DV ad on accident, like by
Domestic
complete
violence, right?
mistake.
So,
Domestic violence.
and
So,
also,
and so,
also,
so
I would.
what is happening right now? Keith, you're a media veteran like me. We're really getting to the point now that the ownership groups are shrinking, and you're having less people in the room to helping these people make these decisions.
Mhm.
And we've always known this industry was controlled by heterosexual white men, of a
Mhm.
certain age. And now they're even getting to the point now they're taking the black men off. They're trying to take as many people off the screen who don't look like them, who don't move like them. The fact that you take Ryan Clark off TV and you give Pat McAfee a crap load of money, to me is just like, to me it exhibits all of that. And so now what you're seeing, especially in sports and the conversation around the WNBA and all that, which we'll also talk about,
Mhm.
it is really being driven by these, and Kia calls them the red pill, blue pill, whatever, all that stuff. I'm not into all that stuff, but just these men that are so misogynistic, they just assholes. And it's like that is what's driving the dialogue right now, seemingly.
So what I would say is, so I've worked in huge newsrooms, right? I've been at the Boston Globe. I've been at ESPN. I've been in I've been in places that were owned by the New York Times. I've been at Bloomberg. I've been in very large media spaces, and I was
Yeah.
also a board member of NABJ, which we'll get to when we talk about another topic later on.
Yep.
Um, what you're talking about in terms of the homogeneity of ownership and the homogeneity of thought is not really changed all that much.
Okay.
That's not different. What's different is the level of transparency and intensity with which the ownership class in media and elsewhere in corporate spaces in this country have jumped on the moving train of Trumpism.
Mm-hmm.
And permissiveness in terms of shutting down debate, shutting down thought that is, this idea of
Discourse.
like thought crime, this idea of discourse, this idea of who, of not just who gets to say what, but of it being okay to say anything that doesn't go along with the agenda to begin with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're seeing. What we're seeing aggressively um, kind of happen, but that's what we're seeing increase. So it's not that what's happening is that media is becoming more concentrated. Media has been concentrated going all the way back to the Telecom Act that happened in the mid 90s, was the
1996.
Telecom
Yep.
Act in 1996, right?
Yep.
Um, and all the way back then, um, NABJ, other organizations, journalism organizations, media organizations, journalism schools have been warning about concentration of voices and of the means of distributing those voices in too few hands.
Mm-hmm.
And the excuse has always been, well, the internet. So when you got to the early 2000s, and especially about the early 2010s, mid 2010s, when social media started to rise, and when people had the ability to become their own publishers, disseminate their
Mm-hmm.
own voices, disseminate their own information, then the idea was like, well, somehow that equalizes the playing field, but it doesn't, because a lot of those new outlets have also fallen into the same hands, right?
Right.
Meta owns Facebook and Instagram,
And
right?
threads.
Yeah.
And Threads. Elon Musk owns Twitter and Starlink, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
and Tesla. So
Mm-hmm.
this ability, Larry Ellison is in the process of already owns CBS and has done a lot of work to distinguish that network in not a good way,
Mm-hmm.
and is in the process of buying CNN and
Right.
Turner Sports and et cetera, right?
Right.
So and one of the things that's been made clear by the current administration is that these mergers are okay if you play ball. It
Correct.
used to be you had to prove that this merger wouldn't be anti-competitive. Now we're not even seeing real scrutiny in terms of being anti-competitive, right?
But yeah, the
What
only
you're
scrutiny
hearing
that
is
comes is that if
right.
it's
It's
opposing Trump's
okay to be
agenda. That's the only
monopolistic
scrutiny. Yeah.
as
Yeah.
long as you're not putting out content
Yeah.
that is harmful to the current administration.
From their eyes. Yeah.
That's it. That's the issue.
So, are we good to go to the next topic?
No, but and
Yep.
yes, we are. But Keith's point, Keith makes extremely valid points, and the fact that having worked in the industry, this is what we talk about constantly. About we're at a place right now where we have professionals like Keith and Jamel Hill and so many people. You look at what's the guy from Miami that used to be on ESPN or Fox for a long time, and now he's strictly on the internet. He was on radio
You know,
forever.
Dan
Dan
Levitard. I'm
Lebatard.
talking about Dan Levitard.
Dan Lebatard. So many of them have gotten to the point that and ironically, this morning it was I heard Mike Greenberg was talking about how he's been at ESPN for now 30 years. And so you look at the people who have long careers, it's not as much about talent. Don't get me wrong. I like Mike Greenberg. I've always liked Mike Greenberg. But Mike Greenberg is like vanilla ice cream. He is accepted. He's easy. He's easy to deal with. Evidently, they love the way he moves. And so many hundreds and hundreds of professionals who've come through ESPN over those years. And so there's certain type of people like Greenberg who always their jobs are never in jeopardy, but then folks who have voices and opinions, they get cut. So anyway, move on. What else you want to talk about there, Sister Kia? Come on. Well, you the one who want to put this our squad back together. This is how we get down. Let's go.
Yes, and again, remembering, having flashbacks, and
Yeah.
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 But I'm good. No, but the next story is up both of you guys alley a little bit more. And I hate this man with a passion, and you know why. Ennis Cantor Freedom has decided he's going to take his act on the road and decided to show up to a basketball game wearing a women noun adult female T-shirt. He sat courtside at the Wintrust Arena for the Skies game against TNA Fever. Alter said Freedom turned himself into a potential threat by stepping towards Cloud after she chirped after he chirped when she made a basket in the third quarter. Security restrained Cloud, then removed Freedom from the arena. And I have said this last week. I will say this week. This man doesn't give a damn about women in sports, the WNBA, none of that. He is doing this strictly for attention. Have we ever seen this man sit at a court? You can look up to the sky to figure out what you're going to say to me all, but he doesn't
I'm
care.
thinking. Can I think?
Has he ever sat courtside at a WNBA game? No, he
I've
hasn't.
never paid
Have we
any
seen
attention to
him?
Enes Kanter since he left the NBA. I don't. And
Fine. Have we
yes,
seen
yeah.
him at
And
any female
so,
sporting event, swimming,
so let
anything?
me,
Nothing.
let me pick on both, pick up on both of your points, right? Kia, to answer your question, no, he's
Thank you.
never shown any significant level of support, not
Just to
only
jump
for the
in real quick, I think
WNBA, but
with
he's
the
never
difference
shown
between
any
this and his
significant
cancer,
level of support for any of the real issues that are facing women in sports. He hasn't talked at all about the Trump administration and what they've done on Title IX. If you don't understand what Title IX is a federal legislation that's been in place for decades
just to jump in real
that
quick,
prohibits discrimination on the basis of gender in education, and that includes extracurriculars like sports. Title IX has been extremely important in the formation of the WNBA because it gave the opportunity for women's college programs to be funded, which gave opportunity for lots of the women who are now playing at the professional level in basketball and other sports that to further their craft beyond high school. And the second really important thing, actually probably the more important thing about Title IX, is it gave some teeth to the enforcement of anti-sexual harassment and sexual abuse on college campuses, right? So in that context, if you're not talking about equal pay for women, and as Cantor hasn't made any, had never made any statements in support of the WNBA Players Union when they were trying to get a new contract. Never talked at all about U.S. women's soccer while he was playing when they were trying to get a new contract. Hasn't made any noise about any of those things. If you're not talking about giving teeth to sexual abuse, giving teeth to any efforts to tamp down on sexual abuse and sexual harassment of women in college or in any context. And what you're then concerned about or feigning concerned about by way of saying, well, I care about women is, oh, we can't have trans people participating in women's professional sports, which by the way is not a thing. It's just not a thing. It doesn't exist. It hasn't existed. And it's probably not going to exist anytime soon. Then what are we talking about? So that's point one. Point two is to go to what you said, Miguel, not paying attention at all to Ennis Cantor. Why haven't you paid attention to Ennis Cantor? Because Ennis Cantor wasn't all a great basketball player. Ennis Cantor didn't have a lot of attention or a lot of eyes on him when he was in the NBA.
Right.
People didn't start paying attention to anything that Ennis Cantor did because Ennis Cantor wasn't doing anything significant until he started on this trip of conservatism and going down the path of being a right wing social media troll when his NBA career was about to be over.
Hmm.
This is very clearly a ploy by somebody who wants to use women and use what he believes is a winning issue about women to jumpstart. And I don't know what his end game is. I don't know if it's to become, to get his views or his clicks up and to be an influencer in social media spaces or to become a radio host on the right wing or whatever the thing is or to get speaking engagements. But it's not about protecting women. It is about attention and the kind of attention that his skill as a basketball player never warranted him getting.
So,
facts.
there's a couple things that, and we talked about this, and for you guys, we talked about this last week on the show. Um, Enes Kanter Freedom, which is his moniker now.
That's his
I
real
want to say
last
he's
name, by the way. That's his legal last name.
Yeah,
His legal
he
last name
changed
is
his
he
name.
Freedom. He
changed
had
his
it
name.
changed.
He changed his name. It's Enes Kanter and
He
Enes
did.
Kanter Freedom. I want to say he is from Turkey.
He's from Turkey.
He is from Turkey. But anyway, so my point is that he started towards the end of his career, he started to get into the political conversation of things, right? And so with this, once again, one thing that I talked about last week, this is a distraction, and I really believe, as we talked about, the ability for of right wingers to control the media. He and Royce White
Right.
um, are people, I believe, who are being paid to be antagonists, right? They're being put into this conversation to just drive engagement in this conversation, and it really puts people who are in conflict with each other who should be allies. Because when I talk to women athletes that I know personally, some who played in the WNBA and college level and all, they don't even want to talk about this, right?
Right.
Because they're in a conversation with. We know that the LGBTQIA community is a big part of the WNBA and college sports, but that doesn't mean that they also want to be associated or deal with the conversation around trans athletes. A lot of them don't even want to deal with that conversation. We talked about this a couple of years back. There was a swimmer, I believe she was at Penn State, who competed initially as a man, as a swimmer at Penn State. A
Her name
year
was
later,
Leah.
2 years later, now she's competing against women in the same sports. She went from being a someone who was finishing in the 200s to being someone finishing in the top. You may
Leah
trying to
Thomas.
break records. And so when you talk about the fairness, how do people look at that and say that's fair for young ladies to swim all their lives and train all their lives, competing against women, and then they have to compete against someone who has spent part of their lives as a man and then transition? Same thing with
So,
basketball. The
so
woman that's in France and I'm kicking it to you, Keith. The woman that's in France right now playing, physically you see her. This person is very strong, body 6'3", 220. How is a woman supposed to compete physically with that individual? But that's to me a distraction. But go ahead, Keith.
I think the greater point there is that all of this is a distraction. But to answer your specific question, when you talk about how much of this is how, how is this fair? Okay, so I've spent some small part of my life as a marginal athlete, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm, tall kid who somebody took and stuck under a basketball hoop because I was tall, not because I was particularly all that talented.
Sure,
Um,
I can relate.
but right, but so in any sport that I've ever played, little league, all the way through high school, and even when I started boxing as an amateur when I was too old for anybody to care. Um, any gym, any basketball court that you go to, any baseball diamond, um, women have been competing, and we're not going to pretend that they haven't. At every basketball court I've ever played on, there were women there who would dog half the dudes at least who were on the court. Every basketball court that I've ever been on, every boxing gym that I've ever walked in, there have been women there who who would send you home with marks on your face if you stepped
Mm-hmm.
in with them, even if there was a weight difference, because they were skilled enough to do
Mm-hmm.
so. Right
Okay.
now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the case in every scenario, or that that's going to be the case in the margins. What you're really talking, or in the mean, what you're really talking about is at the margins, right? Like there's a certain percentage of women athletes who are going to be better because they are just better
Mm-hmm.
than male athletes because they're just not as good. And you're going to find that. And then yes, then you can get into, yes, like at the professional ranks, there are going to be differences between size and strength, and that's a conversation that I'm willing to have, and that's a conversation that I think that we should be having. But in the mean, um, I don't necessarily think that it's always a question of fairness about whether or not women can compete, because I've been watching women compete with dudes in sports and winning for a long time at various levels. And I'm also aware that, again, like, we are not talking, this is not a real thing. This is ginned up for culture wars. There are not mass numbers of people who were born as men who really want to compete against women at the pro level or the college level or in the high
Wait,
school
let me
level.
jump
There's
in
like,
for a second, really, really quickly.
All right, we're gonna let you jump in on the second half of that interview. So that's the interview there with Keith Reed, and getting a little spicy, We'll drop the second half of that after what, because his kid ready to go to bed, and I back in talk. I can't hear you. Is your mic on?
Yes, I am ready to go to bed because my hair is starting to like do weird things and tell me like, hey, it's time for us to be in a bonnet. It's time for night.
Oh my god.
But
So.
no, I
Mhm.
do want to go into how what before we go back into the second part of that interview, because this is one that is going to make, I don't know if it's gonna make you laugh or make you mad.
Here we go. Let's see. All right.
All
This is
right.
the
So
segment of our show where we get into. Hold on, I gotta do my little thing. You know, it's so funny because what's his name? Kev on Stage got a new show. He just told me he premiered called "I Saw This on the Internet." Yeah, this song from what I said. This is what this is. This is stuff we see out here in the internet streets and make you to be like, huh, what did that really happen? Yeah, it's out there. All right, what you got?
So I'm gonna go ahead and send this video to you inside of our guest chat so you can post it up. And everybody's favorite coon, Brandon Tatum, decided to go after somebody that we never thought that he would go after. He decided that he would go after First Lady Michelle Obama, saying that she's ugly, basically.
Woman act like she cute though. Michelle Obama is not a good-looking woman. Everybody can't be fine, like my wife.
Now,
Everybody can't be fine, like my wife. Woman act like she cute though. Michelle Obama is not a good-looking woman. Everybody can't be.
I saw that last week, but go ahead. I'm gonna let you go, and then I'm coming. Go ahead.
Now here's where it gets funny. His wife Corinne decided that she was going to start responding to people, which is always an awful idea because you never win. And she basically said, "Oh, how could you guys not realize that he was just joking? He was just kidding. That wasn't real." And people were like, "Sweetie, he wasn't joking. Where was he joking in any of this? He was dead serious. He thought it was funny." And she's now, trying to clap back at people, and people are like, "No offense, but you look like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. No offense, but you look like a gremlin. No offense, but you look like one of the white chicks that got made up with dark hair." Everybody's telling her she is unattractive, and she's now reposting people's profile pictures. But my whole thing is, as a woman, what you should have done was, my husband said a really bad joke. I don't agree with it. I think Michelle Obama is a beautiful woman. Don't let him drag me into this. That's what I would have said. Like, I don't want no parts of this. My husband thought it was funny. It wasn't a funny joke. I didn't get it. Whatever.
Right.
But she's diving right into the garbage.
Well, that seemed to be a thing. She's not my speed for sure. But I look at this stuff and I said, dude, what did you think? It's just crazy to me how these people must really be winning in their pocketbooks doing this type of stuff. So for this clown to come out and do one of the worst things you can do, which is attack a black woman on the internet, because that army that's gonna come and jump on your ass is gonna be nothing to play with. But it must be working for him, because for you to come out here talking about Michelle Obama and because nobody knew who Officer Tatum was a month ago. His community knew who he was, but for most of us, we didn't know who
I knew who he was. I'm a weirdo. Only reason I knew who he was because me, I stay
You're
very
on the right
much
side.
involved.
You hang out with you know.
I watch red pill content. I do. I enjoy it. I plug my earbuds in. I watch my red pill content. But he really got famous because of his stance on the Nolan Wells case. That's why he's gotten a lot of attention, and he's capitalized on it. Everybody knows rage baiting works. Me and Miguel have been doing this long enough, where we know people rage bait to get the attention, the clicks, the views, the downloads, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just, we always say here, is it worth your self-respect? And for some people it is. Some people don't care. For me and you, it's not worth our self-respect to be going that deep into the hole.
Right. Because it wasn't necessary. That was just not a necessary fumble that he did right there by going after Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama, since she left office, for the most part, she's like, man, I don't want to deal with most of y'all most of the time. I just decided I'm gonna start doing this podcast because I can make some bread over here, and I don't have to engage with a whole lot of folks. But I ain't trying to make a whole lot of public appearances. I go where I want to go. She is reading the Oprah Winfrey playbook and saying, but then you want to sit up here and say that you're gonna pick on Michelle Obama. Bad move, Playboy. But you need to go back and find out them people that was on that Jupiter, what is it called, Jupiter or Jubilee joint that you did, where all them people was smoking you on that doggone Jubilee joint. Worry about that. Worry about that, Playboy.
I mean, it's definitely really, really, really crazy. And I mean, honestly, that's the only big one that I have. And I want you to take the what off, because there is a couple of things that we can talk about that are a little more serious before I go, is that we've had a very, very important death in the Black community that happened, and we lost Dolly Parton. That is a huge, huge member of the Black community that we lost. You can roll your eyes about Dolly. Dolly was amazing. Everybody loves Dolly Parton.
Here's the thing. I was all with you until you put that on the Black community. We lost in the community. Dolly Parton was an ally for sure, No
Yes, she was.
question. She had some ally history, but that ain't no. Come on, we ain't just pulling her into the black community now. Dolly Parton was a beautiful
She's
country
invited
white
to the
woman.
barbecue in heaven. She's
Right.
invited.
So a lot of
but
folks don't
but
know, and it's always amazing stuff that people don't know. That I Will Always Love You, the Whitney Houston most famous iconic song that she did with the Bodyguard soundtrack 30 plus years ago. That was Dolly Parton's song that she wrote. That was her song.
yes.
Whitney did it better. The black side is what we feel. I know country people may say Dolly did it better. Whitney did it better. But God bless Dolly. Go ahead and finish up your soliloquy.
But and Whitney did it so good that Dolly actually wrote her and said, "Sweetie, this is your song. This is your song from now on." And they always associate it with Whitney Houston. They don't associate it with Dolly, and she's fine with that because it also cuts Dolly a good old check every time it's played. So Dolly doesn't care. Dolly also had the iconic song Jolene that has only been sung good by her.
Yeah.
Beyonce
Hold on,
tried
before
to
you go to
remix
Jolene,
it.
did you know? I just learned this myself. Did you know that Dolly Parton took the money she made from that song and donated and helped build a black housing community in the Nashville area?
With Jolene, I thought she did it with the
No,
9 to
not
5
with Jolene.
song.
With the Whitney Houston song.
Oh, I did not know that. That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's part of the reason why people, say that, Dolly Parton was, a big part of our community because she took the money. They were saying it was something like $10 million she made off that Whitney Houston track, and she put it right back into the black community in Nashville, Tennessee. But go ahead about your Jolene story.
But no, Jolene can only be done by Dolly. Beyonce tried to remix it, and it's just some things. Dolly is just an iconic woman. And worked in the 9 to 5 song. She was on Steel Magnolias. She's just been such.
It's one of the movies back when I was probably 10 or 12 when that movie came out. It was a fun movie.
She was married to 60 years to her husband. I forgot what his first
60
name
years,
is, but his
wow.
last name is Dean. Did you know most people didn't know she was married because her husband was like, I don't want to be on the red carpets. I don't want to do none of that. I want to stay home and do this at the house. And then you come home, we be together, and then you go back out. But they're married 60 years.
Yeah.
He died last year, and a lot of people said that she kind of died of a broken heart. But my favorite thing about Dolly, she explained her iconic look. And when she explained it, I was just like, she's the best thing ever. She basically said there was a prostitute that lived in her city. And every time her and her mama would go into the city, they would see this prostitute. And little Dolly would say, Mommy, she's so pretty. I want to look just like her. Because she had red lipstick and the big hair and the outfit and the whole thing and the high heel shoes. Little Dolly thought she was so beautiful and said, I'm going to look like her all the time when I grow up. And that's why she has that kind of big boob, blonde hair, big hair.
So you basically
makeup.
said that her image, her image model was a prostitute, and you made that such a sweet story.
But it is a sweet story because little Dolly liked it. Little Dolly thought it was amazing. If people think I'm making it up, she said it multiple times in multiple interviews that is how she got her iconic look from that. Outside of Dolly,
before we leave Dolly, there's also a Dolly adjacent story. My Alice, don't get mad at me, but there's a story that Elvis Presley came to Dolly Parton and wanted to do that song as well. But Elvis Presley's manager said if Elvis sings the song, he takes 50% of the part of the publishing, and Dolly Parton said, "You can kick rocks. I'm keeping my publishing." I Will Always Love You.
I Will Always Love You.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine him singing that.
Yeah. So Elvis supposedly sung that song to Priscilla Presley, at their wedding, and he wanted to re-record that song, but in order to do it, because of course he was the biggest thing going, his manager made the demand that you got to give up half your publishing, and Dolly Parton said, "I ain't giving up shit." And fortunately she got it, and then Whitney Houston got it, and there's a part of the story. So anyway, all right, something else you want to finish up before you wrap up?
The other death that we had is the death of Tim Curry. Some people know him from Home Alone. Some people know him from Little Shop of Horrors. Some people know him as Dr. Frankenfurter, I forgot, but he's a famous actor. You would know his face if you saw him. And he passed away, and that was kind of like a big deal because he was such a good actor. He dealt with, I think it was ALS is what he ended up being diagnosed with. He was wheelchair bound, but he also passed away. So that's also very sad.
Well, God bless the Curry and the Parton family, and their contributions to us. So all right, so we gonna let Kia roll. We're gonna play the second half of our interview, which continues. Even though Kia is gone, but she's still gonna be
same look. Same look. I kept the same shirt on.
She's still in there.
So it blends.
All right, sis, we holler at you later. Second half of the interview with Keith Reed.
Just to jump in real quick, I think with the difference between this Enes Kanter freedom situation and let's say Leah Thomas, the one who was swimming, is that Leah Thomas was actually transitioning. She's actually going through the process. Yes, she was rough on your eyes. She was an ugly trans woman, fine, whatever, but she was still going through that long process of transitioning. So I feel like people gave her more respect because she's actually a trans woman. What Ennis is trying to say is just because I say I'm a woman, I am a woman, so I should be able to declare for the WNBA, which I feel is
I,
highly disrespectful because
I
I
don't,
think
I
it's
don't,
not
I
the
don't
same
think,
thing.
I don't think that's what I don't. That's not what he's doing. What he's doing is he's making a mockery of the fact that.
Well, we know that, but I'm just
Well,
saying
that's what
his
I'm saying. So
argument, the way he's going about it, is ridiculous, even more ridiculous.
it's driving a conversation that we know is ridiculous because he's trying to make women declare who are women, right? So
Hmm.
because of course the conversation around trans is and all of that. One thing, Keith, what you were saying earlier is what makes me always kind of pause and push back is this. Yeah, a college girl, like, well, here's what we know. So University of South Carolina practices against men. All the top schools, they're going to practice at some point against men physically.
Hmm.
But they're not practicing against the University of South Carolina varsity men's team. They're practicing against a group of guys who can hoop, but physically they're not 6'9", 6'10". They're not at that. They're not in that realm, right? Yeah. If I walked in, walked in LA Fitness right now and ran across a 22-year-old girl, a 27-year-old girl who've been playing college ball, she gonna move me around the court and she gonna do her thing. Here's where the challenge is for me, because I'm always about the slippery slope that's being presented. 6'4" guy who goes through college, goes through semi-pro, doesn't get where he wants to be, and he may have, he may be LGBTQ. And he may have those aspirations to say, you know what, I want to transition. 2 years after he transitions, he's still 6'4". He's still 240 pounds or 200 pounds, and he's still got a 35-inch vertical leap. But now he's transitioned into a woman. He's going to have an advantage where he was not that great in basketball as a man, but he's going to have the advantage physically against all those, the AJ Wilsons and others in the league, just because of the physical stature. And that's just, if someone as big as a LeBron James or just an average, like an average NBA player, 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", that's the type of things me raising two girls in basketball and all the girls who I've coached. And I said, a girl, a Angel Reese who's 6'3", 6'4", being a dominant rebounder, she's gonna have a problem against an average ball player who transitions and now they want to play women's basketball as a trans athlete. That's the part that everybody said, well, nobody's trying to do that. They're trying to put us in position that that's going to be okay 5, 10, 15 years from now.
Who is the they though? It's like I have an issue with the straw man that comes up, and when I hear the word they, it's always a clue that the straw man is coming, because it's never because if there's a they, let's name the they.
Well, right
Who's
now
the
the
they?
the, the,
Because
the
I
they
can,
is Tatart out of France, who says if they called her to play the NBA right now, she would come.
but they ain't calling her, so that's irrelevant.
Of
That's
course,
one.
of
That's
course they're
not.
not.
That's
Of course
that's
they're not
not.
calling
That's
her.
not. That's not they. That's not a movement of mass numbers of people who have the ability to move legislation or to move policy in a direction towards any one of these professional sports organizations actually allowing mass numbers of people who transition to come into the sport, which is to say nothing of the fact that there aren't mass numbers of people who want to transition to come into the sport. That doesn't exist, right? So, like, I caution, and I'm not trying to invalidate what your concern is for your daughter or for anybody else, but I just caution, like, how we talk about certain things, how we present certain things, and when the straw man appears, like they're trying to do this. And I heard this, like, so I was a reporter at the Boston Globe in the early
Mm-hmm.
2000s, 2003 or 4, 2004, I want to say, when
Mm-hmm.
Massachusetts became the first state to legalize gay marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time in mass I heard this they straw man thing. And it was massive numbers of people who had no argument otherwise about whether or not somebody who was homosexual should be able to marry another person who was homosexual, right? Doesn't affect your life, not taking money out of your pocket, not changing anything. And if you went down the litany of questions about, like, how does that affect you? what's going to happen to your job? What's going to happen to your ability to feed your family? What does that mean for they could never answer. When I say they, meaning the people who I spoke to who opposed gay marriage could never answer. This is how that's going to impact me. So the trick would be they're gonna, if they allow them to do this, then they're gonna change our neighborhood. Somebody told me they're gonna, this is gonna allow them to, push up the cost of housing because they're gonna be moving into our neighborhoods and buying up all the property because now they're married and they can do this, so on and so forth. And it just was like the litany of arguments, the litany of straw men became ridiculous, and nobody could ever name the they. The they that they were talking about didn't exist. Gay people already existed in Boston. They already own homes together. They already cohabitated. It's been happening all over the country for forever. The only thing was they didn't have the ability to have their legal rights recognized as partners, so that if somebody died, if somebody was hospitalized, if somebody needed long-term care, etc. That was the sum and substance. And what the Constitution says is that you're not able to discriminate against people in terms of what they can legally do anyway, right? So we're just
Mhm.
affirming what the Constitution says in the first place. And the argument against that, when you couldn't invalidate the constitutionality of it, when you couldn't invalidate it on the basis of somehow it was going to be some material harm to you or your family or your life, it became, well, they're going to do this, they're going to do this, they're going to do this, and the people could never name the they. And what I'm saying to you is, I'm always skeptical when people can't name a they, but they say they're going to do this, because I need you to be specific about who the they is and what it is that they're going to do. That's a real harm, because we know from
Mm.
data that there are not mass numbers of trans people who are looking to transition for the purpose of playing in professional sports. We know that there are not, from data, that there are not mass numbers of people who have already transitioned, who are also athletes, who also play at a level that's high enough that they would be Division 1 or even Division 2, and certainly not professional athletes who are looking to compete in those sports. It is a very, very small percentage of the overall population who are people who are transitioning for any reason, let
Well,
alone
let me jump in.
transitioning and
Let,
being in the
let-
1% of the 1% of the
right.
1% of people who are
Somebody on
capable
my
of playing,
side.
of playing
Somebody on my
in
But see,
side.
the
the
problem, kid, is
WNBA.
that there's a perception that there are sides in this conversation. That's the challenge that always, when I talk about straw men and saying why you believe that I'm not on your side, is baffling to me. And here's why. And here's why.
Okay.
Because I have no issue with the LGBTQI community. That is their business. So let's go about a boxing analogy, because Keith, because you have a boxing background, okay? Okay. So if you take a 140-pound featherweight, I don't know, you know boxing. I don't do boxing like I used to. 140 pounds is featherweight, right?
No, that would the featherweight be a lot lighter than that, but
So
continue.
you
But
follow my
if you
analogy.
have somebody that's fighting at 140
If
or
you have
one,
somebody
someone
fighting
start
at
at
140,
147.
you have somebody fighting at 140, right? So even better,
Okay.
even better. You know boxing. I'm not into boxing like I used to be. What weight class is Clarissa Shields in? She's
Clarissa
140,
Shields.
150.
I can look it up real quick.
No, I think Clarissa Shields is heavier than that, if I'm not mistaken. I think
Hold
Clarissa
on.
Shields might be 160, if I'm
Okay,
not
so
mistaken.
if
And
Clarissa Shields is
if I'm putting way too much weight on her,
She's
then I
middleweight,
apologize to her.
160.
okay,
She's
so she's a
She's
middleweight.
160.
middleweight.
That's what I
Clarissa
said. She's
Shields is a
160.
middleweight, 160. Now, Kia, I want you to look up the 160 middleweight champion male right now. And so as she's looking that up, like Clarissa Shields at 160 would never get in the ring with a 160-pound man who's a boxer, because she would get knocked out and it wouldn't even be close. Right. And
They
so,
don't have a boxing middleweight that came up as the middleweight for UFC, and that's Sean Strickland, and he's 185.
well, there's a boxing middleweight
But
champion that's out
you
there.
can go to
There
Ring
is, but
Magazine
I'm
and
not
look up
sure
who the
why
So,
it's
look up
only
who.
showing.
so
Yeah.
whoever is the weight class, the similar weight class as Clarissa Shields at 160 pounds, Clarissa Shields would never get in the ring with that person, because that person is not the boxer that's at the local gym. That is a professionally trained 160-pound beast of a man that would destroy her. That's my analogy. My analogy is a Angel Reese at 6'3", 6'4", or Aja Wilson, who is the number one by far women basketball player in the world right now, 4-time MVP, champion, the whole nine. She's 6'4", She's probably ranging anywhere between 180, 190 in that weight class. That is the average small shooting guard in the NBA. And so you take that and you say, if you take an average 6'4", 200 pound basketball player who wasn't good enough to be in the NBA, and they all of a sudden say that not for whatever reason, they could also be someone who who wants to be who wants to transition to a woman, and then they decide to come into the WNBA, they would have a distinct advantage because of physicality. That's the end and beginning of my position on it. This is not about doing any harm to anybody in the LGBTQ community. That's
Well,
the
no.
unfairness of, in my
So
mind,
No one's saying that.
of
No, no.
that.
When I would made the joke
so
about being on my side, what I'm saying is talking about the actual argument that we're having, because there's two different conversations that happened with you and I last week and this week.
Mm-hmm.
Your argument was mostly about protecting women's sports and making sure that this doesn't happen, and just protecting girls in sports. That was your argument.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not having that argument, because that argument is not what the issue is with Ennis and Royce and the magical amount of G League players that are considering coming up in the G League, which I think he made that up. That's not my argument. My argument is strictly that he is doing this only for attention, that he doesn't care about women's sports, and that it's red meat to the Republicans and the far right because, ooh, we found a new boogeyman. Our new boogeyman for the last 2 years, has it not been trans people? Has that not been the boogeyman? Once DEI
Of course
stopped?
it has, because it's an easy distraction. But for us to not to understand that the argument is the same, the conversation is the same, is why I say it's a distraction, right?
Mhm.
Because when it's all said and done, all about keeping women out of men's, or men out of women's sports, and that blanket statement that folks on the right will say, it's a much more nuanced conversation than that. But it's
Yeah.
very easy from a political position to put that out front and make people who don't watch sports, who've never been an athlete in their lives, who don't give a damn about it, just to say, why do we want men and women's sports? Now it goes to, why do we want men and girls' bathrooms? And it gets into all that nonsense, right? And so I'm looking at that thing and saying that's one conversation that leads into this other conversation that muddies all this stuff up, and it puts these people who have nefarious intention and keeps them in power, because
so
it's a ridiculous conversation.
so I'm glad that you brought up Clippers and Shields on this,
Mm-hmm.
because as you know, I follow boxing. I was a former combat sports editor at ESPN, and I have boxed myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Clarissa Shields actually has, within the last year, been at the center of controversy because she does a lot on social media.
Way
Um,
too much.
but she has said publicly that she thinks she's a better fighter than a bunch of dudes, and I'm
She
talking
has.
about dudes who have been champions.
She has.
She called out fighters including Keith Thurman and Showtime Sean Porter. If you want to put, and she also called out Jake Paul. If you want to put Jake Paul in that class, which I
He's
don't.
not. He's not. But go ahead.
He's not in that class.
Like,
But the
no.
point is, so the point that I'm making
Yeah.
is Clarissa Shields at whatever weight that she's fighting at. I thought it was 160, and you confirmed that is correct, right? But whatever
Mhm.
weight that she's fighting at, Clarissa Shields don't feel like she need to be protected from nobody.
But
And if
with
So
Clarissa
Clarissa, is that
let's use
Shields,
that
bravado?
if
example.
Wait,
if
wait, wait. Is that
if
Jake
now
social
Paul
no no
media?
fights it.
no,
Go ahead. Jake Paul
let,
fights
let,
at
let,
probably 200 pounds, right? Let's just give him.
right.
He's in the 200-pound range, right?
Mhm.
Jake Paul is not a fighter that we take seriously. He's not a real
No.
fighter. He's a social media influencer. Would you
Right.
put Jake Paul in the ring with Clarissa Shields
Yeah,
and
she would beat
expect?
him.
Huh?
Yes, and she would beat him. Yes, and she would beat him.
Interesting.
Yes,
Okay,
and
go
she would
ahead,
beat him.
Kia.
100,000. I listen. So I want to bring. So there's a fighter. You all may not know her, but her name's Tika Hemingway. Shout out to Tika. I'm from Pittsburgh. Tika's from Pittsburgh.
Can you
I
speak up a little
trained
bit and move your
with.
hand from your mouth so we can't hear
I'm
you?
sorry. So I'm talking. So
Yeah.
there's a fighter by the name of Tika Hemingway, who y'all might not know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from Pittsburgh, and Tika's also from Pittsburgh. And I don't know Tika well. Shout out to her.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know her well, but she has spent time training with Roy. She was Roy Jones Jr. for anybody who
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand her
Mm-hmm.
word
Mhm.
reference, right?
Right.
She's like legit. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Tika was in my gym one day. This is a few years ago, let's say 2022, 23, something like that. I went to the gym, showed up at the gym. Um, Tika was in the gym, and I'm doing my old man shit. I'm, whatever I got. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? I'm
Right.
hitting the bag. You know what I
Right.
mean? And Tika was in there, and she's throwing punch, and I just at a certain point stopped focusing on my bag, and I'm watching her, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
watching her, watching her. And if you know about boxing, you know that you can tell by that how good a boxer somebody is, not by watching their hands, watching their feet.
Mm-hmm.
Where are their feet when they're throwing? How are they
Mm-hmm.
turn? Are they sitting down on their punches? Are they positioned in such a way that they can parry or they can get out of the way? Like, and that all comes from your lower body, not your hands, right? And I'm just watching her feet, and her feet are doing something that my feet can't do. And at some point, she turned around and she looked at me and she was like, "Oh, you like what you see?" And I was like, "Yeah, sis, I respect your footwork, right?" And
Mm-hmm.
she and I don't know, like, because I think she was kind of like, "Oh, like, why are you staring at me?" And I'm just like, I am not staring at you for no kind of no
Right.
reasons.
Right.
I'm
Right.
just
Right.
I'm
Right.
watching
You're
I'm
watching the
watching your
skill. You're
footwork.
watching the sweet
And by the
science.
way,
Right.
and by the
Mm-hmm.
way, I don't want no smoke because I
No.
probably outweigh because
No.
I probably outweigh Tika. I'm 227 right now, walking around.
Right.
When I was active, if you want to call it that, I was like 217. So I'm probably outweigh her by 60 pounds, if not more than that. Oh, I ain't want that smoke. I'll tell you right now, I didn't want that because the only reason why I might win a win a sparring contest, let alone an actual bout with somebody like that, is because I'm so much heavier. That will be my
Correct.
only defense. Not hands, not
Right.
feet, not no boxing skill,
Right.
anything like that. So what I'm talking, so this is what I'm talking about, right? Like if like to know something about sports is to know that like there are absolutely women in every sporting endeavor who could compete against people against men, if that's what you want to call them, or men who have transitioned, or trans women, like whatever you want to call them. There are absolutely women who could compete with them because there's women who would dog them in the ring or on the court or on the track if
Mm.
even if they hadn't transitioned. Now, to say
Mm-hmm.
all of that,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that the conversation is as black and white as that. It is. I do not believe that it's as black and white as that. I am saying let's stop trying to let's stop playing into the dog whistles and the straw men and the Ennis Cantors and all these people who want this conversation to be oversimplified to the extent that it is. I need to protect my daughter from from the big bad boogeyman. Because what I would teach my daughter, I have a daughter, and what I would teach her is as she grows up to play sports, maybe she'll box. She loves to come down in the basement with daddy and punch and try to hit the bag and stuff. Maybe she'll box. Maybe she'll hoop. Maybe I take her to the gym with me when I lift. Maybe she'll be a power lifter. What I'll teach her and what I would teach any young woman in any endeavor is fuck that. You ain't got to be scared of nobody if you're good. And if it comes to a place where you're really in a position where you're being put in a place where you could be hurt or where you could be or where somebody could take advantage of you, then we'll have that conversation then. But really what you need to be focused on is just being the best at your craft to begin with. That's what I think we need to be teaching little girls. I don't think we need to be teaching young women athletes that oh, this boogeyman of potentially maybe somewhere down the road this trans person is going to come and compete with you in your sport, because that's probably never going to happen. But if it does happen, and if by some stretch of the imagination that person is allowed to compete against you and you can't avoid it, I want you to be ready for the challenge. That's what I want for you. I want somebody to be looking at your feet and going, I want that smoke. I want I
Yeah.
want you to be able to say with with the confidence of a Clarissa Shields, I'll dog that dude. Put that dude in the ring with me. I'll
Mm-hmm.
smack. That's where I am on this. I'm not
When
worried
and I know we got to
about the
move. I want to move on.
potential hypothetical.
Yeah, I want to move on to the Stephen A. part of the conversation, but
Well, there
this
is no
will be.
Stephen A. part of the conversation. It was just basically him kind of talking about what both of you guys are talking about. So I just added that as extra context. The next story is actually talking about the NFL and that whole NFL players who did not make it and are now going back to college football, which I think is ridiculous. I also don't know anything about the topic,
We'll
so
get
I
into
can.
that. Let me respond to a couple things. So appreciate your insight, Keith. I get it. but it's something we're going to probably agree to disagree and continue to evolve the conversation, right? And in part because I'm in the gym with girls at all levels, and I've been in the gym with girls while my girls have grown up. I've spent, this summer on the EYBL circuit with my girls, and I watched and I see these women and these young women, and I know their ability, right? I see their ability. Physically, it's just not, it would not be fair. It's just the best of the best of the sisters that are out there, young ladies out there hooping. And I watch WNBA night in and night out. And it's just the levels, there's levels to this, right? We go back to Billie Jean King back with the first time on the tennis court, going back 40 or 50 years ago. We look at Serena Williams, who at her peak was serving at about 120 miles per hour, where, some of the average tennis players out there, males, are in the 135 to 140 range in their serve. Do I expect that young lady you talked about in Pittsburgh to be able to give you some work in the gym? Absolutely. You're a 40-something-year-old man, right? She's probably was in the peak of her career. But when it comes down to the average, Clarissa Shields, I guess, is in her late 20s, early 30s, whatever old she is. She's in the prime of her career. The prime 160-pound middleweight male fighting the prime 160-pound number one boxer in the world in Clarissa Shields. You can't convince me that she would be able to knock him out and that he wouldn't handle her very soon. And it's not because she's less skilled. It's not because of her footwork. It's because at the best, the hardest that she can hit, he's going to be able to take it because physically he's just that much stronger. And so that's where I get into the protectiveness of the daddy phase, and that's just, that's part of that thing. But I just, when it comes back to putting a bow on that part of the conversation, to me, it makes people who should not be at odds with each other be at odds about this conversation. Because when it's all said and done, these folks on the right, they're sitting over here and they're really laughing at the fact that this is a real conversation in our communities because they don't give a shit about none of us. All they care about is just muddying up the conversation and saying, oh, it's real easy to say, well, of course, we don't want men in the bathroom with girls. As someone who would have to, as a girl dad, who at times my wife is not around, when I would have to, I'm glad they got family bathrooms now because now, I can find a bathroom. But when they were toddlers, 2 and 3 years old, you know what I mean? I would have to cover their eyes up maybe and take them in the bathroom with me or send them in there by themselves, which I didn't want to do. So that's something everybody can relate to. And they bring it into a sports context, and so it is what it is. All right, Kia, let's move on. You want to talk about Stephen A. Smith. You want to talk about football and what's happening right now with it's crazy. You got players that are who go into NFL combines, and they've figured out that they're not good enough to play in the NFL right now, and so now they're possibly going back to college, taking roster spots from kids in almost September. And they're debating that. I saw it this morning on ESPN, and they're trying to figure out how to make that happen. Keith, this is crazy.
Yeah, you can go to two screens because I have no idea about this topic at all whatsoever. So go ahead and go to two screens. I'm going to mute myself and go get a soda. So let me know when yeah.
All right. So, all right, Keith, let's talk about this this conversation that's going on right now with they're actually talking about NFL players who have now, it is now August. We're getting ready to start. Football season starts in less than 2 weeks. And they're talking about players who were not good enough. They haven't made the rosters in the NFL. They declared early in the draft, and now they're actually talking about going back and playing college. And it's August. You got games that's happening this weekend, man. And so now they're even contemplating that of letting these kids go back and play college ball.
Yeah. It's really difficult for me. As I've written about college athletes in the past, and talked a lot about college sports. It is always difficult for me to take a position that opposes what the student athlete thinks is in their best interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have talked about strongman arguments in the last segment, and we've always had. There have always been people who are very comfortable with the institutional power and wealth represented by the NCAA, propping up strawman arguments against paying young athletes for their name, image, and likeness, or paying them outright for their labor,
Mm-hmm.
or or against any number of proposals such as collective bargaining, which was ruled on in the O'Bannon decision a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Having college athletes, giving them the ability to essentially market their labor as a free agent, which is essentially what the transfer portal has become. Red shirting. I mean, you just
Mm-hmm.
go down and down and down the list of things that um, wealthy boosters and fans and athletic directors and college presidents and the people who sit in governors' mansions that somehow either benefit or profit politically or financially from the labor of college athletes. And so my default position has almost always been, hey man, if it works for that athlete, go on ahead and figure out how to make it happen. I'm not in opposition. This one feels a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
This one feels a little bit different. Just you know there. So it's kind of like if I'm there's an opportunity cost that's involved in almost any transaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was stuff on my calendar today. Kia called me this morning and said, "Hey, we need you come. We need you to do the show." Right? She's been trying to
Mm-hmm.
get me, like you said, back into the podcasting space. Like, we need you to do the show, and I was like, my days kind of full, my afternoons, this, that, and the third. So there's an opportunity cost for me to be here having this conversation with you, even though I very much am interested in everything that we talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Every job I've ever left, there was an opportunity cost in terms of, like, if I go to the next place, if I move to the next place, I might not like that city. I might find out that it didn't work, that doesn't work. So we all make choices about where we go and what's best for us, and we
Yeah.
generally have to don't get do overs in terms of being able to go back. If I'm dating this person and I decide to leave this person, and it's like, oh, she cool, she high, whatever, and but shorty over here got a little bit of whatever. If I leave, steady Stacy over here and go
Mm-hmm.
and go to hot girl over here and
Right.
found out that hot girl really ain't working for me, I'm probably not going to be able to go back to where I came from.
Right.
And that's certainly oversimplified in terms of what's happening here, but I just find it. I say that all to say I find it a little bit more difficult to be in a position of the the staunch support that I've always had for college athletes to break up away from the nonsense about amateurism and all of that when everybody else was getting paid. This one feels a little bit different. This one
Mm-hmm.
feels like, you have the ability, and it's largely because we've gotten away from that, right? So college athletes now, if you're playing at the Division 1 level, if you're playing at the level where you are in that world where you're eligible for NIL, if you're at a school that has a collective, if you're at one of the programs that's likely to put you in position to go on to the NFL and at least compete in the combine, um, or to look for or to be eligible for the draft, or to even go and try out as a free agent, as a walk on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're aware that there are risks. There's boundaries around that. There's a reason why the system has tiers. Um, and if you choose to exit and go to the NFL and there's not a market for your services, um, you know, teams move on. Now, I don't necessarily think that there's tremendous harm in somebody trying something, trying to go to the NFL, and then saying it didn't work. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that the NCAA is extraordinarily harmed by this in the way that the NCAA is making out to be. I do think that logistically it becomes problematic.
Mm-hmm.
If you spend your summer preparing for the NFL Combine and training for the NFL Combine, um, there's a bunch of students that are going to enter the transfer portal. Slots are going to get filled. People are going to move around. Um, Schools got to fill up their rosters. Scholarships have to be allocated. There's this entire ecosystem financially and athletically that exists that accounts for X number of people moving on and X number of people coming in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Coaches build rosters. Um, you know, Offenses and defenses get installed. Things are happening that when you're not present with the team that you are on, the train is moving.
Right.
And so logistically, it gets, I think, unimaginably difficult if there are, especially if there are large numbers. I don't think that there are large numbers, but especially if there are large numbers of athletes who choose to leave, go to the pros or try their hands at the pros, and want to come back. And I do think that that on some level, like, some of y'all are gonna take a risk and are gonna have to accept that you took a risk to move to the next level, and your spot might not be there. And
Well,
and
well,
and that
yeah,
exists in every endeavor in life. If I'm going to
correct.
try to do this, and then I decide to try it and it doesn't work, well, hey man, my
Yeah,
spot might not be there when I get back.
but here's the thing. Here's the thing. And once again, I'm always looking forward and saying, what could this turn out to be, right? This kid from I think Ole Miss, and it always come back to Lane Kiffin. He's always in the mix with some stuff, right?
It's
Um,
always somewhere.
he always somewhere in the mix of some stuff. This kid goes in the draft, and he's probably already had the conversation with Lane Kiffin to say, if it doesn't work out for you, kid, we got a spot
Hmm.
for you. But
Hmm.
at the same time, and I don't know what position, I think he's a tight end. At the same time, did he have a conversation with that redshirt freshman or that freshman tight end that says, we got this guy right now who's in the Browns training camp, and if it doesn't work out for him, he's coming back.
Hmm.
And that potentially could affect your scholarship. I
Sure.
seriously doubt that conversation was had, right? And
Yeah,
so
no, that
then
they
you
ain't,
have
they
a
ain't moving
scenario,
like that.
right? Huh?
They're not moving like that.
Okay.
No,
So,
no. What,
but
what I mean by they're not moving like that is that conversation definitely didn't happen. Like
right.
that.
Okay.
That
So right.
they're not having
So
that conversation.
so my point being is that I'm a kid who goes to Ole Miss. I'm from Orlando, Florida. This is my dream to play SEC football. And I think in at the end of August, I've done everything I'm supposed to do. Some of these kids leave high school and start
Hmm.
college in the spring. Some of them have been there for 6 months
Hmm.
already. And then right before it's time for the season, somebody comes back and they're going to take minutes from me or possibly take my spot. And to me, it's like, where is the line, right? Where if you don't give these people any sort of parameters, personal situation, my oldest daughter played college tennis, and because of COVID, we had that 1 year where they got that extra year. That's when we started having this extra year conversation about 5 years ago, right? And so now, when it came down her senior year, she was cut from the team because of personality conflicts with the coach, not because of ability. And at that point, the coach had a whole nother year of a pool of athletes to choose from, and that's where we are. And now we get to the point that August 28th, whatever the day it is, to 26th today, and now they're contemplating how they're going to bring back kids who were in NFL camps now back to the college ranks. It's just like, man, stop calling this college football. It's minor
Yeah, it
league
hasn't. It,
football.
it hasn't
It
been.
is
It
minor league
hasn't.
football.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why I said, like, moving away from the farce of amateur athletics. That is not what big time major program power conference football or basketball for that matter are.
Right,
They've been too flooded with money for decades, not
right,
just recently. Yeah, of course, it's even grown now that it's more out in the open, with the NIL stuff, but it was flooded with money long before that. There is some mercenary aspect to all of this, right? Like, these are people who are out here who are hired guns. The coaches and the athletic directors, and to a lesser extent the coordinators, um, were hired guns to begin with. They were already operating under this mercenary system that was flooded with money. And you go out there and you bag whatever athlete that you could bag, and you put them on the field. And the only people it wasn't working for was the athletes. So now the athletes are experiencing that power, and they're exploring the limits of what their newfound power is. And the question is, are they now bumping up against a hard limit? Because to this point, it's been malleable. It's been, you've been able to get to one boundary, get to the other side of that boundary, go to the next boundary, go to the next one. And this is what happens when you limit somebody from having agency over their movement and agency over their financial future and agency over their bodies and agency over their careers for so
Mm-hmm.
long that once you then you bring down those barriers all at once and nobody knows where the limit is, or even if there is a limit.
Yeah.
I would argue that there should be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure exactly how you would structure it. Um, I'm a lot less concerned, like I said, about any harm being done to the NCAA or to the schools themselves,
Mm-hmm.
more so than I am with the students. But then you could also argue, you know, the same if given the same scenario that you just proposed, where you have a freshman who signed his name on signing day and is a scholarship, or maybe a kid who was definitely a kid who's on a bubble, who's going to a school, and maybe they're not a scholarship athlete, maybe they're hoping to win a scholarship. um, is this any different than getting somebody from at the last minute out of the transfer portal? And then
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, hey kid, hey bubble kid, hey kid who was our, the last scholarship that we had to give out. We got this kid at the last minute in the transfer portal. So now you're gone. So my question then is like what kind of protections is the NCAA set up for the kids in this situation? For the
Yeah, I
ones
don't
who
think the
are more
kid.
vulnerable,
Yeah.
because the ones who are superstars are going to have the Lane Kiffins here. They are going to be able to go to their coach and say, hey, can we work this out? They are probably going to already be represented by an agent once they've made the decision to declare for the draft. And when it doesn't work out for them, they're going to have friendly relationships with the boosters and with the collective and with the athletic director and all of the things that prop them up, to help them return. The other thing, and the kid a marginal talent. I don't want to say marginal talent. These are all high level athletes, but the kid
Correct.
who's not that connected isn't necessarily going to have that protection. So then the question for me is not so much about what happens to the kid that goes and takes his shot and doesn't make it. My question is, what about the kid who is just starting and is trying to make something make a career out of football or out of basketball, and is getting screwed by somebody coming out of the transfer portal or somebody coming back from the NBA from the NFL draft. Last thing I'll say about this is, so I heard that, so some of this is going to fall along the lines of antitrust, right? Like one of the big arguments that was made in O'Bannon and some of these other court cases around athletes getting paid was this idea that the NCAA and all of the conferences were essentially a cartel,
Mm-hmm.
that they engaged in anti-competitive behavior because they all propped up this system that didn't truly allow a free market for your labor as an athlete. And that was one of the arguments that led to these kids that the court in O'Bannon ruling that college athletes had the right to collectively bargain. It was one of the arguments that led state legislatures to start to put some parameters around these NIL collectives and the transfer portal and all of these things. It really comes down to, people think about this as fairness in athletics, and it's not really about fairness in athletics. It's about standing compliance with the law that very clearly said that the NCAA had been anti-competitive for decades.
Mm-hmm.
So in
Yeah.
this instance, the Big Ten and the SEC have each said that they're going to work together
Mm-hmm.
to combat this idea of students coming back. And so to me, that I go, the non-lawyer that I am, is if they are saying, at least two conferences are saying out loud and publicly facing, we're going to work together to prevent this from happening, kind of starts to sound a little bit like anti-competitive collusion. Now the argument could be there are a bunch of other conferences that you could go play in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Division II schools exist. The ACC exists. The Pac-10 exists. All of these. The MAC exists. You can go
Mm-hmm.
play in any one of those conferences. But you and I know
Right.
that if you really want to be in the big time in
Right.
college football, it's
And on the
the
path to be a
SEC.
pro, you're going to play for the
It's
Big Ten
it's
and
the
the
Big Ten.
SEC.
It's the
Correct.
Big Ten and the SEC.
Correct.
And so if they're saying that out loud, to say nothing of all the other arguments for or against, I would love to see that argument get tested. As a reporter, like with my
Yeah.
journalist hat on, I would
Yeah.
love to see what happens when that argument gets tested in court. Oh, y'all said publicly that y'all
Right.
were going to work together to prevent this from happening.
Right.
You each representing X number of schools that you're telling me that I now have no option to go back to because you're going to work together to enforce this rule against me going to do what I did. Um, I want to know what happens when a judge gets a hold of that. And I'm not saying either for or against. I just think it's very interesting because all of these other things, all of the other dominoes that fell in college football were dominoes that fell in the marble that knocked the first one over was all about anti-competitive behavior at the institutional level in college sports. And then y'all
Yeah.
said, we're going to do that again. Let's see if it works. I'm interested to know where that falls.
Like, is Drake hip hop? I know.
Drake
Because
is
we're here
pop.
for truth. We're here for
Drake
truth.
Drake is pop to me.
Right, that's fair. In the sense that it's charting like pop music, popular music.